Hey everybody, welcome to Great Podcast. This is episode 2. We're doing a podcast for beginners by beginners. My name is Carrie Potter, and I'm one half of Juniper, and that can be found at www.junipercomic.com. Say hi everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, world.
Who wants
Very
to
beautiful this
introduce
morning.
themselves and their comics, just in case anybody forgot from last time?
All right, my name is Peter Hernandez. I don't currently have a comic, but it's gonna be a comic. You can find the website. It's over at piercito.com. pierresito.com. I can't even spell it anymore. Oh god. Yeah. Anyways, just Google French Peter, little kid something. I don't know. And yeah,
Cool.
It's a
you
professional.
cannot find me
Stephen
anywhere.
Gillen.
Don't look for me. Don't find me, please.
So professional.
I know. I didn't blur that at all. That was perfect. Someone else fix it. Someone else say it better than me. I don't know.
Yo, I'll go. I'm Stephen Gillen. I make a comic called Antics, which you can find at anticscomic.com.
Very good.
And Rich?
My name is Rich Clabo, and I do the Graveyard Gang, which you can find at thegraveyardgang.com.
And Mel?
And my name's Melony Chitwood. My launch date will be July 1st. Yay! So right now the website is not up yet.
Alrighty, so today we're talking about inspiration, where it comes from, what you do when you get it, who our biggest inspirations are, and also at the tail end of the episode we'll talk a little bit about writer's block, if it even exists, how you get unstuck, all that stuff. So, who wants to go first?
Inspiration. Big topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Spin the
Need to
wheel.
do the answers.
so Stephen, where does your inspiration come from?
Mine is very fickle. It changes from comic to comic. It's just in terms of getting started on writing. It's usually for me it's just a matter of sitting down and scribbling down anything until something sticks and some topic that I come across seems like something that I could run with. But generally, yeah, it's a mixture of watching. Like, I don't really read much in the way of comic books. I read a lot of webcomics. I watch a lot of TV. Pretty much everything for me comes from just pop culture in a similar vein of humor. Like, I love Adventure Time, pretty much any comedy movies, like a million different TV shows. And it's just a matter of absorbing everything I can and learning different joke constructions and learning what it is that makes me laugh and what it is about the wording that makes me laugh and so on. And after that, it is just really a matter of just sitting down and mixing words together until something seems vaguely funny and then running with it. That's me.
That's you.
Oh, yeah.
Inspiration. I guess it's a question asking like what inspires my story or what inspires.
Yeah, or what causes your creative juices to get flowing?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I had to agree with Steven on that. And it's just, the eating and digesting of content is always something that I mean, all things, like all sort of creative works get a reaction from someone. And it's just like channeling that reaction into something productive is what I'm kind of aiming at. Like my story is, a lot of it is just examining my life, but it's also kind of just thinking about what I'm looking at. I mean, like the world, I guess. And as it comes down to like, looking at other people, how they have, handled their own stories or their own ideas. I guess it's more like not so much of an inspiring, like jumping off point, but just a way to kind of compare where I'm going or where my process is taking me, looking at other people. I mean, like I could name off a whole bunch of artists that I like and a whole bunch of books that I like to read and stuff, but I don't know if they inspire me so much in the sense that they get me going. I think it's almost something that's innate and it just happens. And maybe the works are more like a guide than an actual starting off point. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's more like the guide, like the directions in the road, not the fuel. For me.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a good way of putting it, I think.
Yep.
But I don't know. What about you guys? What about you, Carrie? What inspires you?
Well, since we do gag a day, it's much like Steven, where I watch a lot of looking specifically for funny stuff because inspiration for projects. I kind of try to think about the tone of the project's voice, and obviously, for funny stuff, I look at funny stuff, and serious stuff for serious stuff. But above that, I try to closely kind of observe things that kind of resonate with me in those genres or whatever. And then, for funny stuff, it might be a cartoon or a TV show or a movie or another comic, something somebody else is doing. And some of those things kind of don't lend themselves to comic writing or art, but I think you can take bits of things that you enjoy and use them anyway. And I look specifically at things like timing and pacing and funny situations in other people's stuff for inspiration, because I find joke writing really strange, because I was writing a lot of, like in my major and stuff, I was writing a lot of like short stories and memoir stuff, and things are a bit longer and more linear, and writing in Juniper is nothing I've ever done before, and trying to like deconstruct a joke, why it's funny and how to reproduce it and stuff is bizarre. So looking to professionals for this stuff like that in one form or another is basically how I go about that, and trying to use that as guidelines instead of I'm not trying to directly copy anybody, of course, but just trying to see what they're up to and how can I play off that or use that to my advantage in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what artists and comics inspire you?
Let's see here. I wrote a bunch of them down because I knew I'd forget.
Very good.
Derp. Well, art-wise, we looked at a lot of things. We spent that giant chunk of time planning things out, and during that time, we looked at Adventure Time and Pendleton Ward stuff, and like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and for some of the facial expressions and stuff. I look up, I think, like when I'm drawing something or writing something, I like to keep somebody else's stuff in mind, but I don't look at it, so I can kind of get maybe the feel that I'm going for, but not verbatim anything.
Mm-hmm.
So like with facial expressions, sometimes I like to think of like SpongeBob SquarePants, because there's some really outrageous kind of bizarre faces in that show.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes Fairly Odd Parents. And when we were trying to figure out how to draw horses, which was probably the hardest part.
Yeah, you picked a hell of a character.
Good Lord. Like, it didn't seem like that big of a deal. We're just like, oh yeah, and one will be a unicorn. But then when we sat down and like, okay, well, how the hell do you draw a horse? We had like these like animal anatomy almanacs, and we were looking at My Little Pony and the Pegasus from Hercules, and just trying to figure out how you even draw a horse. So that was a big deal for a while.
Yeah.
Now, when I have to do it, I can draw him from like the head to shoulders, but whenever I have to draw his whole body, if I ever do, like if I'm standing in for Sarah or something, I'm just like, oh my god, horses, why?
Those are
and
the
the
comics
writing,
that take 9 hours.
God, yep. And the writing, I guess, as far as like, there's joke construction and then there's also subject matter. So like with joke construction, I look a lot to Penny Arcade and then like Seth MacFarlane stuff like Family Guy and American Dad, and sitcoms for like situational humor and family stuff, and then just overall anything that makes me laugh. And I kind of try to examine why it makes me laugh, which usually makes it unfunny. Once you start tearing apart a joke to try to figure out why it's funny, you don't think it's funny anymore.
Yeah. But as long as it makes you laugh in the first place.
Yeah, you're like, well,
Just
I thought it was funny
remember
a couple hours ago, so yeah. And then I kind of think that a big part of developing your own voice and humor is to examine your own sense of humor and do things that you think are funny. Because if it amuses you, it's probably going to amuse somebody else. So, and then for writing subject matter, a lot of the stuff in our stories have something or other to do with magic or silly stuff, and so looking at things like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Adventure Time, Harry Potter, classic fairy tales, anything Ghibli is usually a good way to go. And anything that's magical and doesn't really owe anybody an explanation for why it's magical is kind of something I like. And then also family and friends and things that happen in real life that are funny are often a really good source of subject matter. Because pretty much everybody in my life is really funny and has a great sense of humor. So there's funny things happening around me all the time. So we draw on that a lot. So there's little bits of friends and family in the comic already. So far they don't appear upset.
Yep.
So
They probably just don't think that the jerk characters are them.
yeah, and we're not like going, I don't think it's anything overt or offensive really. Might just be a funny thing they do. So yeah, I mean, like, you can get inspiration, I think, from all over the place. You just have to kind of let it all in,
Mhm.
But yeah, sorry, that was long-winded. So please,
No.
somebody else.
No, that's
No,
fine.
no.
As long as it's interesting, and it was.
Well, I'm glad that it's interesting. But yeah, from anywhere and everywhere that makes sense with the tone of the comic and the tone of the sense of humor.
Now, Carrie, do you, and even you, Steven, doing Gag-A-Day, do you guys work off of, like, do you make, like, a list, like, say, of your characters and then, like, different subjects that could be, just to get your juices going, just, like, list of, like, just ideas to bounce off of, like, say, like, holidays, like, you can list holidays or potential jokes or work or different things about work or different things about, home life or, just winter things or spring things, and just to kind of use that to bounce off, to think of ideas.
We have a document in Google Drive called Idea Dump, and that is basically just anything and everything that we think of that might have a little nugget of humor in it. We write it down, and sometimes we'll get together and just, it's like, okay, let's think of ideas, and then we just, sort of word vomit it onto the page, and sometimes there's funny stuff, and sometimes like, nah, that was funny yesterday, but not today, so just chuck it. And or a lot of times the way that we're starting to write these days, like, I find it easier to write when Sarah and I are together so that we can kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And even though Sarah is not a writer, most of the time, like, she's got these great little seeds of ideas in her brain, and having her there to share those with me is really great. And also, she's kind of the quality control person, so, like, if something's just really not working, and I'm like, yeah, like this, and she's like, no, you know what I mean? Like, but, it's to the betterment of the comic, though,
Right.
So, it's kind of a mixture between having this big document full of little ideas and funny things that we've kind of thought of, and try to find the punchline in it first. We kind of work backwards a lot of the time.
That's the same for me.
So we'll go, okay, here's the idea, and then it's like, all right, well, what's the punchline? And if we can't find one, we just move on and don't use that idea, and maybe come back to it a few weeks later. But in general, it's like, okay, if there's no joke in it, there's no point to keeping it around. So, and yeah, we just try to pull from, like you said, seasonal stuff or real life stuff, or things in movies or books, or we try to, like, think, okay, well, this house is a magic house, so what kind of goofy magic things can happen that are totally silly or random, that throw these guys through a loop, and what kinds of things do people encounter in friendships and roommate stuff, especially with boy roommates. It is kind of a lot of funny. There's a lot of funny meat on them bones, so messes and and
I'm still chewing it off after like 5 years. It's a good subject.
Messes and
I'm nowhere near organized enough to have, like, I'm nowhere near good enough at organization to have anything sort of Google Drive mapped out or anything like that. I just work on sketchbook after sketchbook after sketchbook after sketchbook. Like, I don't tend to do much in the way of, like, actually using it for sketches. It's just ideas packed full of them, and for me it's just a, like, word association kind of thing. Like, I just keep throwing out word after word after word, and if a couple of them combine into something that sounds like it could be funny, I'll do like you said, Carrie. I'll sort of try and think of the joke first, and then if that works, try and construct a full comic about it. And then if the joke ends up changing midway through that, then fine, it's obviously better anyway. And But yeah, I just tend to, like, my creative process is just lying down on the couch and staring out the window with a notebook.
Whatever works.
Close enough.
As long as it keeps working, I'm going to keep doing it. And yeah,
Yeah.
but just because I've got, like, I don't know how many notebooks I've got now, dozens, but it's gotten to the point now where, like, it's just sometimes the distance of time is enough to come back to it fresh. Like, if I'm completely out of ideas, I can open up a notebook from like 3 years ago, and I'll have ideas that I just sort of scrapped straight away. Then that now I'm like, oh right, actually this will relate to this, and I can use it to relate it to this old character that I did and bring them back. And yeah, it's just, I think for me the part of it is having a sort of, I mean, I wouldn't really call it a rotating cast, but I've got quite a few like different minor characters in the background that if I'm completely out of ideas, I can just say, oh, I'll bring back this person, that'll be a comic. And
Yeah,
they
we're
can at least
slowly-
tide me over until I can think of something more original the
Right.
next time.
Yeah, we're slowly kind of building up a cast of characters, and we've got Douglas Barry, Mavis, and Carl, and then the fire sprites, which are kind of a silly thing to use sometimes. But we did do a totally Barry and Douglas free strip that people seem to like, and knowing that that's a possibility is really cool, because you're like, oh, I'm sick of drawing them, or I'm sick of writing about them or whatever, and you can just switch over to something different and show fireballs baking cookies in their mouths. So.
What about you, Rich? Where's your inspiration come from?
Well, being a big comic fan, I think I grew up reading comics, and especially long form. Starting off with the superhero stuff. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, they did the Fantastic Four, and they did just a really great run of how to do a long form comic and how to establish your characters and build a supporting cast. I think for a long form comic to work, you got to have a good supporting cast. I mean, even I think for a Gag-A-Day, I think you do too, because this way you can bring them in, like Carrie was saying and Steven was saying, that you could just bring them in and out. I mean, that's what I'm doing kind of with this first season of the Graveyard Gang, is introducing the town and who lives there and all these different characters that I will be able to bring back and forth into the strip. So, I mean, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are a big influence. Will Eisner, I don't know, do any of you know who Will Eisner is?
Yes.
Good,
Does
good.
he have anything to do with the Eisner Awards? Because that's the only Eisner
Yes,
about.
it's named after him.
It's named after him. He was a
He's
pretty big
word.
guy in comics.
Yeah.
All right.
He used to do this.
Shadow.
No, he did the Spirit.
Oh, yes, right, the spirit. Sorry.
What he did,
watched
he did
Spirit.
this. It was an insert inside the Sunday Comics called The Spirit. It was a 7-page story he did for years and years and years. And in that 7 pages, he told all different kinds of stories. He told crime stories. Basically, The Spirit was this guy with a mask on. That's basically it. And he would fight crime. But
That's
some of the
the
stories would be...
movie, right?
Pardon me?
There was a movie, right? That's the same. the same
Ignore
story.
that. That was horrible. He had nothing to do with that. But he just showed that you can make like a strip. Like he would have the Spirit, fight a crime story. There'd be a supernatural story. There'd be a funny story. There'd be some stories the Spirit wouldn't even really be the main character. He just showed you, and he did it all in 7 pages every week. So, if there's anybody you got to study, it should be him, because he just was able to do so much. I mean, now comic writers write comics, like one story has to be 6 issues now, so they could fit it in a trade, which to me is kind of poor storytelling to me, because it's like, some
Deliberately stretching
comics,
it out. Yeah.
they just really milk an idea unnecessarily a lot of times, And this guy Will Eisner did it 7 pages every week, told a complete story, and it's just something to study and to learn from, which I do.
Yeah, it's too bad that it seems like maybe ever since like the mid '80s or something, the short story has really kind of stepped out of the whole realm of literature, even to comics, I think, and
Oh yeah.
it's a doing something in a concise way like that is really difficult. It's a skill that not a lot of
And
people.
that's one of those things where it's sort of been relegated to anthology sort of work.
Yeah.
Like it will tend to be
Right.
that an artist isn't known for doing short stories. It's just they do their own thing, and then everybody once in a while will contribute well, not everybody, but you know what I mean. Well, lots of people will contribute short stories to a particular project as opposed to that being the person's body of work.
Yeah, it's just
Right.
kind of interesting. I know Stephen King used to do it, and like there were some guys in the 30s and stuff that used to do it. But like it's interesting that as good and as kind of meaty as those stories are, people have sort of stepped away from the short story. But I think they're worth it.
Mhm.
Sorry, derailing, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, the comic thing confounds me because they want readers to come into comic shops and buy a comic, but all comics are like so interconnected now. Like you'd be picking up like part 6 of some storyline, and you'd be like, well, I don't feel like buying, the last 8 issues of some comic to get
More to the
caught
point,
up.
you don't even feel like
Especially
looking for
when
them
it's
most of the time.
$4.
Right. I mean, they don't make them standalone anymore at all.
That's
So
honestly
that's-
why I don't read them. I mean, and why I probably read like more Japanese comics than anything, because I mean, a Japanese comic is just all contained in a little book or
Right.
a series, and you know
Right.
where to start. I mean, there's a nice big number saying number 1. Like,
Right.
This is it. Start off, and then
Well, yeah.
so yeah, I don't like if I wanted to read Batman, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Good
Right.
Lord. Well, I think that's part of the reason, like, why I've mostly turned my attention to more new series and stuff, because there's just, like, what if I wanted to read X-Men from the beginning? I can't, they're not
Right.
even available anymore. Everybody who has one bought them all up, and even if there was an X-Men #1 out there, it would be, hundreds of dollars. So it's like there's no accessible way to really jump into that universe unless you do it from, like, a new iteration or something. So it could be a little tough if you didn't get in on the ground floor on some of those projects. So
This also kind of goes back to what Rich was saying about people trying to make a story, stretch it out and stuff. Like, when do you let a story die?
Right.
In a sense,
it's
like-
like you should write a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and
Right.
wherever it stops naturally, I think.
Mhm.
But when you're sort of commissioned to do this big, long,
work.
in this series of things, it's like, okay, I've got to issue 5 and I've got nothing else, so I guess I'll just do some bullshit and hope that it works out. Like, I don't know how you manage all that.
Well,
Yeah.
with like
Artistically.
the Marvel and DC, it almost feels like what they're doing anymore with their stories is they're trying to do a long form, but with the almost gag-a-day idea of, well, we can make this last forever.
Oh, I see what you're
Personally,
saying.
I
So,
think they need to end some of the stories.
so you're saying that they're not so much a story with a beginning, middle, and end. They're trying to create something with the same characters and a long story that's sort of made to be indefinite.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like
That's,
characters are going on too long.
Honestly, I think that stories have to have an ending for a reason,
mm-hmm.
It gives them more value. It makes you respect the story more. If they don't have it, then why read it?
Yeah.
I despised jumping into the middle of X-Men even when I was 11, I wanted to know what happened before, and
Right.
there was no way for me to ever find out.
Well, now there's Wikipedia, luckily, but
Yeah.
that's not the same thing.
And
So,
other nerds.
yeah.
But I am very much a firm believer in graphic novels. The way they've got them set up now. I don't buy floppies anymore. I don't buy them
So
monthly.
fragile.
No?
Mm-mm.
They're so
I only
fragile.
buy the trades now.
Mhm.
And, if I don't have a concise amount of story where I can look back at it and know what's going on, there's no point to it anymore.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying about the whole.
But definitely, though, in terms of, well, I mean, I know that the business model is beginning to look like it might not be as great as people once thought it was, but in terms of building a relationship with the readers in particular, there's a lot more to be said for a really, really long-running series where, like, the people who have been reading it from the beginning, they're not going to stop.
Right.
So
Right.
you've got them drawn in. They feel like they're a part of it. Like they know the most about it because they've been reading from the start. They're one of the true fans, and they can quote any part from it. And I mean, I know that does exist in shorter form comics, but it definitely, I don't want to say elitism, but at least that sort of feeling of like, well, I'm one of the true fans.
Yeah,
Lots of these other people are just reading it, and I'm the one who it's for. It's
yeah, I think that happens a lot with people who came into something from the beginning, you know.
Mm.
But then it's like you're also kind of weirdly alienating people who'd like to
yeah.
join in,
I think
you know.
that's the trade-off, definitely.
Yeah, which I think people like in webcomics they've solved by like, oh, if you're a new reader, you've got
Archive,
3,000
yeah.
strips to read. This is a good place to start.
Yeah.
You know, but there's no solution for that, I don't think, to publish comics and things like that. So it's kind of interesting.
All right, that was an interesting rat hole.
It was. Who wants to talk about their inspirations?
All right, yeah. Who was left?
I think Melony hadn't talked about hers yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't talked about mine yet. Where it comes from, it honestly depends upon the project I'm working on. I found that, there's moods and themes and whatnot that you always have with different stories, different paintings, And so when I have a particular dark and gothic theme, that's what I'll consume for a while, movies, books, music,
Mm-hmm.
and try to really bring that mood up in my brain and, just get the roller coaster going there. Let the little hamster run on its wheel for a while.
So here's something I'd like to know. Did any of you guys, before you started your comic, did any of you guys draw cartoons before?
Like, what do you mean?
Like,
As in try to start another comic,
How
or
do you
just like
define
doodles?
cartoons?
like anything simplified, I guess. So like I'd never really drawn cartoon. My background is in like fine art, and
Mhm.
so we did a lot of like still life, a lot of figure drawings, a lot of portrait stuff. And like before we start, like I've always liked cartoons and stuff, and it kind of admired that style and everything. But before we start, we had to actually invent a drawing style to do Juniper in, because neither of us had ever drawn cartoons before.
Yeah.
So did that happen with anybody else?
I think I was pretty
Yeah.
much this. Up to you.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think I was pretty much the same in terms of like not the same in terms of I was doing fine art, because I definitely wasn't, but in terms of having to create it all from whole cloth, that was definitely a thing for me, because I had sort of doodled through high school, and like I did art at high school, and I was always told that I was a bit too cartoony, but I never really thought about what that could mean.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to actually starting the comic, like my style as it is, like that's just sort of developed from doing the comic. Like that's why I started out with stick figures, because I wasn't very good at drawing. And over time it's just sort of developed to the point where with stick figures I can, well, not quite stick figures, but close enough, I can do what I want with that. And do enough with close-ups and with props and with expressions and stuff that I feel like the improvements that I've made are noticeable. I still feel a bit stifled by the characters sometimes, but it's just, I think such as my style is, it's just developed from having started and continued. It's not that I ever went into it with the idea of I'm not sure where I was going with that. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I had a very similar sort of beginning. My background is, like I said before, is architecture, so I just draw buildings with rulers and pencils and lots of straight lines. Maybe a couple curves every now and then if I'm feeling risky with a compass. But when I started drawing my comic, I basically had to go ahead and look at how other people drew comics. That's what I meant when I went back and said that, like, it's more like a guiding than a feel. Like I looked at Bill Watterson and how he drew Calvin and Hobbes, and how all these other people kind of just started drawing their backgrounds. So how did they draw characters? How do you make an iconic symbol for something? I guess I had to study comics, I guess, when I started thinking about actually making one. Because beforehand, when I drew, it was just like a drawing. Like I wasn't trying to make like a cartoon. It was just if I was gonna draw my hand, I would draw my hand. It wasn't like a cartoony hand or anything like that. A bird, same thing. So I guess you could see, even right now, I guess you could say I'm learning how to do cartoons. Not so much of I don't know if I started I don't know if anyone does anyone start drawing cartoons and then they go into drawing, like actual drawing, or
I don't
I
know.
feel like most of us kind of start trying to draw and then just go into
I think
cartooning
for the
after a
most
while.
part, people who go from cartoons into actual drawing is just in terms of getting a foundation for doing better cartoons. Like,
Right.
but I'm sure a few people do go from cartoons into straight up artistry.
Straight
but
up.
it's I think for the most part, like anything I've done that's been more realistic has just been so that I have a better grasp on what I'm doing with cartoons.
Cartoons. Yeah.
Have to know the rules to break them properly and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I since I was always into comics, my first inclination when developing a style was to try to go, drawing realistic, people and muscles and this and that. I think a big revelation to me was kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember this the Batman the animated series, like it was in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
They really
That was
just
awesome.
they really just stylized the human figure, and that was like a big like slap in the head. Like, wow, I don't have to be realistic. I don't,
No.
because honestly, I don't think I don't have the patience to be that meticulous anyway. I get bored with it. But I think just being able to say, okay, I can draw cartoony and just develop a style. It doesn't have to be like super anatomically correct, but as long as it's a consistent style, I think it'll work. And that was like a big like lightning bolt in my development.
That's cool.
All right. Writing inspiration, guys.
Writing inspiration.
Just
Just
reading
sit here.
everything is my thing. It's
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah, you got to be
writing
a
inspiration just comes from reading, listening, watching, everything. Just learning how people construct sentences, learning what makes them funny, learning what pacing makes stuff funny, what's a build-up, what's a delivery of a punchline.
That stuff's so
Yeah.
crucial because
Mm.
there's been so many times in our archive where I just blew it on a joke because I had this great setup and then lost it at the end, which is why we started trying to find the punchline first.
Yeah.
And it's like as long as you have that, you can sort of like sandwich it. It's like, all right, here's the ending. Let's have a starting point and then just figure out how to link these two things together. But yeah, we're experimenting right now with like pacing as far as like the size of panels. Like if it's a quick moment, then the panel will be a bit skinnier.
Yeah.
And just trying to get that pacing and timing on lockdown because that's so important for humor.
Right.
And it's such a weird, fleeting thing. Like it's hard to think about without boggling your own brain. And then also having, because like you can tell a good story and be like, yeah, that's a good story, but like it's so hard to go, okay, well, what do people think is funny? And just trying to like figure out how to battle that subjectiveness and still tell your joke. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think when it comes to writing, I feel like you have to have two reading methods. You have to be able to read as a reader and read as a writer. Because I mean, when you're taking anything in, you have to be able to look at it objectively and understand why it works and how it works. But then you also have to just know that not everybody's reading a book like this. I mean, it was read for fun at some point. So, I know for when I've taken writing classes, the professors are always like, okay, well, here's your story. You have to read it twice. Read it once as normal, and then the second time actually start looking at why it works or doesn't work. But yeah, I mean, just learning to look at things objectively is kind of a hard skill to learn, but you have to kind of just.
And once you get into it, it's hard to unlearn as well. Like you become the really annoying friend who's constantly trying to guess the plot twists.
Yeah.
Constantly like saying the joke just before it comes out of someone else's mouth, or after someone tells a joke, saying, "Yeah, but that would be funnier if blah blah blah." It's
At what point you get punched in the
so irritating.
gob.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that you kind of have to keep in mind, even when you write, because if you're too much in your own head, I've read quite a few stories, people who like they forget to tell you something because they know what the story is, so it's in their head. It works when they read it, but then since they're so connected to the story as a writer, they forgot the reader doesn't know half the stuff that is in there. It's kind of like a balancing act, I guess, because readers do like to be sort of not teased, but like pulled along a story. I don't know. I guess when looking how to write things, just being able to actually do that double reading ability is kind of tricky, but really important.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of goes back into the inspiration thing too. Like, what do we use to inspire ourselves? It's like, how do we look at what is inspiring us, whether it's our style or writing style, how we take that in.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important to like absorb everything, and especially like if you've got a particular style in mind, whether it's humor or long form or horror or fantasy or whatever, it's really important to go, okay, well who's doing it correctly, or a way that I think is really good, and then just consuming everything there is to consume of that, and just so like Peter said, examining it as a writer and figuring out why those things work and what things you wish were different and things like that, and trying to improve on it in your own way.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Etc., etc.
Yes.
So what does everybody think about writer's block?
Writer's block, I don't know.
I don't think it exists. I mean, it's like saying like I can understand someone not wanting to work and not being able to work because they just don't have at that point in time, maybe they don't feel like working. That's a thing. I mean, sometimes you don't feel like working, but I don't think there's an actual physical or like mental block that comes in mind that says, okay, well, there's a wall here that I can't overcome. I can't write anything because I have writer's block or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like good days and bad days.
Right. Yeah.
For me, it's just mood. It's frustration. Yeah, like occasionally I'll be trying to work a joke and it doesn't work, and then I can't get that out of my head. No matter how hard I try, like I'll try and think of new ideas, but I just keep going back to, well, why wasn't this working? Well, if I changed this word, and for me, it's just mood. Like if I'm having a tough time making a joke work and I can't get it out of my head, maybe I need to have a nap. Maybe I need to go for a walk around the block. Maybe sit down and watch a couple of shows, and it's generally just a matter of just giving it some time to clear out my head and stop thinking about it for a second to come back to it fresh.
Actual physical exercise, getting up, going for a walk, maybe vacuuming the house, something physical, something with your hands will free up your brain. Do something monotonous. I found I prefer jogging on a treadmill, just a slow, simple jog, as quiet as possible. My brain really starts kicking in overdrive because my body is in motion, but it's continuous monotonous motion that it doesn't have to think about beyond staying on the damn treadmill.
Yeah, I think it's all just a state of mind, and talking about like sort of distracting yourself or doing something else helps you get out of that state of mind and maybe shifting it to something else, another different angle, so you can look at it differently.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen people use writer's block or creator's block to like excuse why they didn't get work done, but
It's kind of crappy.
I don't know if I don't know if I believe that. I mean, my professors definitely didn't believe it. They were like, "Well, tough cookies. You gotta turn the
You gotta produce. And you
right.
gotta do
It's a thing. Produce crap or don't produce."
But I don't. That, like some people who claim writer's block is that they're just not capable of doing it. But I think once you know that you're definitely capable of producing content, of writing stuff, it's just a matter of time. Like it's gonna end. Like even if I think writer's block does exist in some form because there are definitely days when I just can't.
Right.
But I think it's not so much just I can't write anymore. It's just that I'm in a really shitty mood.
Right. Like you don't want to write, maybe.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It just comes down to mood, time.
Well, that's why I think it comes down to good days and bad. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you all have days that you can't even draw anything. Like
So frustrating.
and it's annoying. But and then there's days you can practically draw with your eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
So if everything, all your synapses are firing at the right time, I mean, you can have a really productive day.
Yeah.
And I just think those days you don't, then that's just a bad day, and it's just whether you didn't get enough sleep or whatever reason, you just got to try again the next day, and hopefully, because that's what I mean when I'm writing a script, I'll kind of put stuff down sometimes and say I really don't like it, but if I leave it for a day or two and then reread my script and go, oh, why didn't I word it this way? You
Mhm.
know, and it kind of comes to you after a while. So I, at least for me, it usually does come to me.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of like a hesitation. Like we forget that stuff takes time to do.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we just don't give ourselves enough time to do it. And so we're like trying to rush it. We're stressing ourselves out, trying to finish whatever we're working on, and it's just like you can't really force. I mean, you can force yourself to work faster, but are you being productive? Is it?
And I think part of it for me is the deadline aspect as well. Like, especially, I mean, I know, yeah, you guys are updating comics as well, but it's like, if I know that I've got a comic that I need to do on Friday, and I know that I have horrible moods where I don't feel like writing, then maybe write it on the Wednesday or the Thursday.
Mhm.
Or it's just it's the buffer thing, that it's the thing that every comic artist wants to do but generally does not. That yeah, it's tough to write in advance. It's tough to make yourself sit down and write 5 or 6 comics, even though you don't feel like it and there's no pressure to do it. But readers, it's so annoying as a reader when you go to a site when it's meant to update, they haven't updated, and they say writer's block, couldn't get one done.
Yeah,
So, well,
that's a bunch
why
of
weren't you doing it when you were in the right mood to do it?
yeah, or
Right.
just put something up, give it a shot. You
Mm.
know? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Even if it's not a very good comic, just put it up.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean that's yeah. But the thing is, I don't know if it exists or if it's psychosomatic, but I will say that there have been like seriously entire weeks where I couldn't think of even one funny thing. Like it happened 2 weeks ago, I think, and I literally could not think of anything, and everything I was bringing to the table was awful, and it's like I knew it was awful, but I was kind of grasping at straws, and I'm like, please something work, you know, but and if I didn't have Sarah there to help limp along during those weeks, you know, there just wouldn't be a comic, or there'd just be a crappy one, you know. And that's kind of what I'm most grateful to have a partner in crime. It's when I can't think of anything, and there's somebody with a brain full of
Right.
little idea seeds that I can talk to get things going again. And actually, that week she wrote the comic.
Nice.
And she keeps saying, "Oh, I'm not a writer," but she actually did write that one. And I was really proud of her. She's like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, but I'm proud of you. Take the praise. So, I mean, whether or not writer's block, I think, is definitely not a viable excuse for anything, but there are definitely days where it is way more difficult to produce anything creative than others.
Yeah.
And I've personally got this really bad habit of wanting to sit there and plow through art or writing problems.
Mm.
But that's pretty much the worst thing you can possibly do to yourself. It's kind of like giving yourself writer's block to sit there and go, oh, this idea is not working. What can I do? What can I do? And just puzzle over it for 45 minutes is just like the most unproductive, awful thing. And
Yep.
and I do it anyway. Like almost every time, it takes me a good hour to be like, all right, you need to step away from this and think of something else, and do something else, you know. And it's kind of against my nature to step away, which is kind of counterproductive. And
You double down.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, probably the best thing you can do is just step away, try not to think about it for a couple hours, come back fresh, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that's the most compelling argument to have a buffer, because I mean, it gives you time to get unstuck. You know, if you're writing on the fly like we normally do, you sort of jip yourself out of that time to throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And you just have to go with it and hope it's not awful, you know, if you don't have time to really nurture that idea. And yeah, just in the last month or so, we've been trying really hard to write in advance so that we don't get that time kind of taken away from us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I believe so strongly in a buffer. It gives you time. You make yourself that space to be able to write better and draw better. And it also gives you time for small side projects.
Yeah.
I think that if you have something small to chew on the side, you know, it's not hugely important, but it's still important enough that it's there. That way, if you really get stuck on one thing, you know what? Put that away for a while. Go for a walk. Work on that other thing for 20 minutes, half hour, whatever. And 9 times out of 10, you'll completely unstuck this, and you're going, that's what I can do. All right, let's go.
And I can definitely say that when you get into that sort of trying to find something else to do on the side, once you've been going for a wee bit longer, it's definitely a good place for merch to come into it. Like it's if it's something that you know that you've got a t-shirt idea, but you just haven't got the time to write it, then just do it. If you can't think of anything, sit down for 2 hours, hash it out, sketch it, take your mind off the other thing. It's still productive. It's still work that you need to do. It's just so nice having that other thing to switch to that you still know is productive.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, do you guys have anybody in specific that inspires you, either art-wise or writing-wise?
Oh, jeez.
I look at, like I said, a lot. I guess Japanese comic books. Not so much for style, like drawing style, because I don't even know what the style is. I don't even know if I have one. But I like I like looking at them for a lot of the layout and the pacing. That's what really gets me. What's his name? Tezuka, the guy who made he made a whole bunch of comics, but he made one, the Buddha comic book, like the life of Buddha. It's like really like similar, like almost like a movie in a page. So I like studying them in the sense of learning how they pace their own stories and then sort of seeing what I can apply to mine. I don't know. That's me. My biggest inspiration, I guess, is that guy and these other two guys who make another bunch of comic books that I forgot. But yeah, mostly I look at a lot of long form Japanese kind of stuff for the pacing and storytelling, just how it works. I don't know if you guys have anything specific.
Writer-wise, I have 3 specific writers I really look hard at because I really enjoy their work, and that's Neil Gaiman, Warren Ellis, and Harlan Ellison. I love all of their work, and Harlan Ellison actually is a short story writer mostly. I mean, he's done like TV episodes and things like that, and they're great, but I really look at his short story work the best. Art-wise, Alphonse Mucha. I love turn of the century, that graphic style that he came out with for advertising.
Yeah, that guy was good.
It's phenomenal, and it's no matter how often I see it, even if somebody's mimicking it, it still just tickles my fancy. And let's see, that's about it for me.
I'm pretty much exclusively, once again, that sounds like I'm very, very limited in my palette by this point, but I'm definitely fall into the category of pretty much just reading webcomics. So I think the major ones for me, like from sort of a young age, I've been super into Penny Arcade, and it's like over time, like I can look back at the old ones and think I don't really like that very much, but I love the evolving of Mike Kulik's art over time, particularly in the last couple of years. He's gone way more painterly, way more trying to cram in amazing textured backgrounds and stuff, even in just regular comics about the two characters sitting down on the couch playing video games.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, Jerry Hawkins' writing style as well is just crazy. Particularly, I actually think I prefer the news posts on the site to the comic in terms of writing for Penny Arcade. Just the style of humor. Nedroid, Anthony Clark, the guy who makes Nedroid with like Reginald and Bear Tato, that has been my major inspiration in terms of starting my comic, and in terms of what sort of type of humor I'm aiming for with the full page things. I think he tends to go more for sort of 4-panel things as opposed to 6, but in terms of that sort of non sequitur humor, but not just, oh my god, look, it's a ninja duck, but in terms of like taking what people expect and doing a sort of subversive version of it, or twisting the joke from what you were expecting into what he was doing, and surprising even the sort of writer people. It's not what you expect from the jokes. And I think that's... Oh yeah, and recently, God, I've forgotten the guy's name, but the guy who makes a comic called Paranatural, which is like a long-form supernatural comic, and his writing is just insane. It takes me... I can go back over a page several times and find jokes that I missed the first 2 or 3.
Oh man, it's an Inception joke. A joke within a joke.
Yeah, writes speech perfectly, writes interjections and sound effects and everything, just works great. So I'd recommend Paranatural for anybody who is looking for a recent comic that is just incredible.
Nice.
And that's definitely one of the ones as well where you can tell that he's just he's that talented that he's developed it on the fly. Like the first several pages are pretty much all pencil work, and then over time it's just incredible what the art style looks like now. So, yeah, worth a look to see evolving style from somebody.
Yeah.
What about-
Anyone else?
Well, like I hate to bring up Penny Arcade again.
Yeah,
But
the granddaddies
yeah, like
of
just
webcomics.
the pacing of their jokes and everything, I've really learned a lot from that. And since they were the first webcomic I ever read religiously, you know, that's kind of the default, I guess, you know.
Mhm.
God, but I can't really, like, I've taken a lot of Brad Geiger's joke writing stuff to heart.
Puns.
Wait,
Yeah,
what?
well, pun, I cannot write a pun to save my life,
Yeah,
and I wish I could
neither.
because they're so silly and so, like, oh my god, you know. Like, I
Yeah.
love a pun that makes you go, "Aw, come on." But
It's the best
I know,
kind!
I can't write them. I've tried, but
They're fantastic.
I know they're fantastic. Blah. but yeah, I guess I've just looked to you know, kind of the Penny Arcade and PvP writing style where and then also kind of outside that outside of comics altogether, like I love Pendleton Ward's sense of humor for Adventure Time, and I like you know, just kind of like taking a thing and trying to take it to the limit, you know what I mean? Which is kind of scary while you're writing, I guess, because you go, oh, I have this idea, but what if it's too silly, or what if it kind of jumps the shark a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And man, let's see. Yeah,
I'm the
like
king of
Pendleton
mustache.
Ward and Penny Arcade, and oh my god, what are you doing? Melanie's playing with
Yeah, she's putting
Google
Putting on
search
costumes.
things. She's got a crown and a mustache and an eye patch and a cake. Um,
and hearts.
but anyways, yeah, I guess my inspirations kind of come from all over the place. So
Mhm.
I actually sat down before the podcast and tried to figure everything out, but it's harder for the Gag-A-Day thing we're doing.
I'll be right back, guys.
Put a lockdown on that, so yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
Just whatever is
And I
funny.
think because
Yeah.
Kara,
I'll
your
go for it.
comic, are you pretty much going? I can't remember thinking about it, but looking back through your archive, I can't actually remember much swearing. Are you trying to go more sort of PG route, or am I just completely missing the swear words?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we basically decided early on that we didn't want to use cursing as a crutch. And,
Yeah.
like, I swear all the time in real life, and I don't have a problem with it. And, you know,
Yeah,
it's just one of
okay.
those things where it's like, I don't want to, you know, just go, oh, it's funny because he said fuck, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I want it
Right.
to be actually clever, you know, and not really rely too much on that.
yeah, and it's weird because I love Penny Arcade, but sometimes the jokes are a little bit like, well, you've just thrown fuck into that sentence
Yeah.
3 times
It's
to make it sound angrier. It's like, again, like I don't mind swearing in comics, but I think it's just one of those things where it fits in the comics that it fits. But
hmm
I like Penny Arcade, but not because of the swearing. I like it because of the
It's clever.
yeah. And that's not to say that I don't like a good poop or fart or dick joke every now
Oh,
and
no,
again,
I
because
mean-
God knows I'm guilty of those every 3 or 4 comics. But
Monday's comic is a poop joke, anyway.
yeah,
But, you know,
every Monday.
and we already did kind of a dick joke. The horn enhancement thing was totally a dick joke.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. Yes, it was.
but I think that the art style in Juniper just does not lend itself to bad language, and I think that if we had started on that, like, oh, it's a cute thing with filthy mouths, like that is an aesthetic choice you could make, but since we didn't do that, and that wasn't really.
But it's so prevalent as well. Like most people these days who start cutesy comics deliberately have the cutesy characters being the
Yeah.
ones that
Are the most foul.
horrible language. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what Happy Tree Friends is, right? Like just little cute, and then
Man,
just
I can't watch
turns
Happy
to
Tree
gore.
Friends. I feel like the worst, but I can't do it.
They're trying so
can't
hard.
watch
It's the
them
eyeballs.
either,
Eyeballs exploding. I just can't. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I can't watch Happy Tree Friends because I find it boring.
Mm.
I don't
That's it.
even find it funny.
Well, Well, and that's the thing is like, shock value has some merit if you only do it once.
Yeah.
But if you have an entire body of work based on shock value, now people are desensitized. Now what do you do? Like,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
was your whole shtick,
If every
So-
punchline is the character exploding in a cloud of blood and yelling "fuck," then it's not very
Yeah.
funny after that.
And similarly, if your punchline every time is somebody saying butthole, I mean, like, you're kind of out of luck after a while, now it's not funny anymore. And
I could see that
So-
working.
I disagree.
That's a funnier word.
It is. But, yeah, so we just chose to try to, like, challenge ourselves to write
Yeah.
punchlines that had nothing to do with swearing.
I think that was more what it was for me as well. Like, I could write swearing, but I found it more of a challenge to try and use words that weren't that. So
Yeah.
the writing style's developed in a completely different way.
I mean, we've said things like "what the f" and "you're being an
Yeah.
a-hole" and
Yeah,
things like that.
exactly.
But I almost think that
I love
in
frig.
itself is a
Friggin'
silly-
is my
Yeah.
favorite.
But some of those words are a little sillier than they're softer, of course, but also sillier. So
Yeah.
if silly is your sense of humor, then maybe those words are better anyway.
Yep.
So yeah. But I don't know.
All right.
Oh, goodness.
Did we go over everything?
I think so, unless somebody has something else they want to talk about in the realm of inspirations or writer's block or anything like that.
Anybody?
I'm good to go.
No, overall, anytime I've got writer or artist block, or what they call that anyways, I found it's just a dwindling of ideas and passion, and you just need to give yourself some time to step away,
Mhm.
do something else, and then come back at it fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the moral of today's story is don't try to power through writer's block. Just let it sit for a little bit.
Work
Give
with
yourself time.
But my God, most of the time it's frustrating.
Oh my god. Well, I feel like, especially with our little 4-panel gags and stuff, it's like, it's so simple. You need maybe 5 lines of text to tell this joke. Why is this so hard? And so it's like, I'll sit there going, okay, this isn't that hard, this isn't that hard. The more I tell myself that, the harder it becomes to actually do it. So, yeah, don't psych yourself out. Just step away. Give yourself a minute. Try to have a buffer so that you have even the opportunity to step away.
Yep.
Because that's kind of a big deal.
That is actually one of the bigger reasons why I just don't go ahead and launch right now. I've got a few pages made, but I want a big enough buffer that if I have a stagnant time, if I'm sick, if, something happens, you give yourself that space.
Yeah. And I mean,
That's
we functioned with no buffer for,
Yeah.
I mean, how long we've been going? Almost a year. I mean, coming up in May, I guess. I guess that's not almost a year, but yeah, we function most of this time with no buffer, and it can be super stressful. And you sort of have this the whole time you have writer's block, you feel like you're running out of time, and you're wasting the precious time that you do have to write.
You overstress yourself.
Yeah, it's super stressful. So it's best if you do have a buffer because it makes things a lot more relaxed and less freaking awful.
So shall we wrap it up?
I think we should.
Probably so. I think we're at about an hour.
Well, thank you guys all for showing up to the podcast.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We did it!
Have ya.
Number
Thank you.
2! We did
Number
it!
2.
We
Oh,
we
yeah.
did number 2.
We did a number 2.
Poop joke.
That is indeed a poop joke.
Always funny forever.
Yeah, a difficult sophomore album.
Alright, guys. Thank you for stopping by.
Bye.
See you next time, guys.
See you.